Welcome back to the Tomb of Terror. Once again brought to you in color and living killer here on the Groucho Orloff Inspirational Network. It is the Tomb of Terror episode 717. And it is April the 19th, 2023. Somewhere around noon. We were looking at magazines when we last left off. Let's continue looking at magazines. This is a current magazine. This is from March of 2023. Vampirus Carmilla. Now, as you can tell, this is made to look like a vintage issue of Vampirella from Warren Magazines. This is put out by a company called Warrant. Their whole goal in life is keeping alive the feel of the Warren magazines from the 60s and 70s. And so, obviously, they're big fans. This is their version of Vampirella. Their version of Famous Monsters is called Monster Bash. And their version of Creepy and Eerie is called Shudder. And yeah, this looks very close to a real Warren magazine. And anyway, this is very much the format, the production design of an issue of Vampirella from circa 1973-74. And it looks like Monster Bash is going to be having a convention. Wow. In Pittsburgh. That's in June 16th through 18th. The Marriott Pittsburgh North. Boy. $60 for 3 days, $25 single day. I wonder if there's video footage on YouTube of previous Monster Bash conventions. I'd like to see what that's like. It looks like a convention run by Monster Bash would be very much all the stuff that I like. It wouldn't be probably Funko Pops and things like that. It would be vintage monster stuff. And Pittsburgh, I don't know if that sounds like a fun place to visit, and it's just a pipe dream anyway. I don't have money to do that. Not in the wonderful world of President Joe Biden, who was 100% legitimately elected, completely above board, it was all real, folks. Fox News just agreed to pay like $700 million to get out of a lawsuit over that. So it's all real. Nothing to see here. Oh, this is their version of Creepy. It was called The Creeps, and that was just one letter off from Creepy. And I guess James Warren is still around, and never really liked that he lost his whole publishing empire just because he got sick once, and he's an older guy now. And I guess he must have sued, so they changed it from The Creeps to Shudder. It's done with complete respect. Notice there's no UPC code. They hide it on the back. It is, well, that doesn't look right. That art does not look like vintage creepy art. This art does. This looks like European art that James Warren would import over. That looks very much like a vintage creepy magazine. Just some of these art, that looks very real. This ad for back issues of Vampirus Carmilla looks very real. But bottom line, it's not the real thing. It's an imitation. It's great, it's like, but it's not the real thing. And I guess maybe, well, you can't get the real thing. You could buy vintage, and I don't have every single issue of Vampirella or Creepy or Eerie, so it's always better to get the real thing. This is an imitation. It's kind of like, let's say, the band the Suffragettes. They're a great band. It's a girl band in miniskirts playing music like the Ventures, but it's still an imitation of the Ventures. They don't really bring anything new to the table except that they're an all girl band version of the Ventures. So, it's like rockabilly in 2023. The real rockabilly was done in the 50s. If you do it now, well, you're imitating the guys back then. It may be great music and fun to listen to and everything, but it's still bringing nothing new to us. And I'm not knocking it. This is great. It's great that someone's making an effort to keep this wonderful kind of thing alive, but it's still it's just considered a tribute to the things of the past. So that's Shutter number 9. This is Shutter number 10. Now, this is an original cover done by an artist that worked for Warren back then. This is a cover by Frank Frazetta. Frank Frazetta is no longer alive. This painting appeared on an issue of Vampirella back in, 1970, 71. So I question reprinting something that was on a Warren magazine. That to me is not bringing us anything new. Now, Warren would reprint the Frazetta paintings, the ones that they printed in the 60s. They reprinted them on their magazines in the 70s. And they're working with the Frazetta Art Museum, and I guess that's okay. I would have used a new piece of art personally, because we've seen that, and that's already been used. That's what I would have done, but I'm not calling the shots. I love this company. I'm not knocking them. They're doing great. That doesn't really look like vintage Warren art much. No, not really. That really does. I'm being way too critical, I guess. This does a little more. What they're doing here is something Warren did. Okay, they're doing a story based on this painting. And that's what Warren would do. They would get a really cool painting, and then they would draw the story based on the painting. They would do it backwards. Usually, comics would write a story, and then the cover would illustrate the story inside. They did it backwards. Sometimes they'd get a really cool painting, and they commissioned 5 different writers and 5 different artists to imagine the story behind that painting. And then you would have a painting with like 5 warrior guerrillas with spears, and then inside there'd be 5 different stories explaining that painting. One might be set in a nuclear war after, some apocalypse, and another one might be set in prehistoric times, and Warren would do that. That was definitely something they did. Yeah, this is even the letter pages look like the old Warren letter pages in here.
On every vacation at a verbal home, there's someone like you who reunited the family.
So, this is Shutter. This is found easily at Barnes & Noble, at malls. but the nearest mall is a good almost an hour away from me, so it's harder for me to get this magazine. Okay, let's look at an actual real Warren magazine. There's issue of Famous Monsters, issue number 50. Gorgo on the cover. Ad for Blazing Combat on the back. What Warren did, Warren wanted to be Hugh Hefner. He wanted to do that kind of magazine. But the Universal horror movies were released to television in 1957 and became a big hit. New generation of kids were into these movies from their fathers and their mothers' generation. So they put out a magazine, Famous Monsters of Filmland, edited by Forrest J. Ackerman, who was a monster expert, super collector, and had a giant archive collection of movie stills. So it was a magazine that became a huge hit. And then Warren started to experimented with bringing back the format of the EC early 1950s horror comics, which were Haunt of Fear, the Tales from the Crypt, and the Vault of Horror. And so he did Creepy and Eerie, and then Vampirella, and they were anthology horror stories. And then and he experimented with doing a magazine about outer space movies called Spacemen. That wasn't a big hit, and one about westerns. That wasn't a big hit. He also did a humor magazine called Help, Harvey Kurtzman magazine, that lasted a few years. But so Famous Monsters was the biggest thing, but he also tried to bring back. EC also had war comics, Frontline Combat, and man, my brain's going. But they had several war titles that were done by Harvey Kurtzman. And so they had several issues come out of Blazing Combat. This was during, the EC war comics were coming out during the Korean War, and the Warren EC-like war comics were coming out during the Vietnam War. And they were both very anti-war, as opposed to the other companies in the 50s were putting out very pro-war comics. And it's like, war is just as much fun as playing football, and just lots of fun. And Harvey Kurtzman showed war is not fun, and the same thing with Blazing Combat. See, here is the comic Creepy that Warren put out, that Shudder is paying a tribute to. I used to be able to order all these films. I would gaze lovingly for hours over these ad pages and look at all these movies. Jambo says, sorry I missed the live stream. Oh, okay. Jambo must just be seeing the show from the other day. I'm recording on my phone, and I get little notifications when people post things under my videos. Here's some iron-on transfers you could get for your shirts. This is issue 50. It's probably from about 67. It's July of 68. I was pretty close. But that's the production design on Famous Monsters. The layout was great. For a little while, they would adapt horror movies, like Horror of Dracula, the first of the Hammer. I always thought that was a blood stain there for a minute. This is a used copy. I didn't buy this off the rack because I was kind of 2 years old. What was this? What did I say it was? 68. July of 68. I was born on April 20th, 1965, so... let's see. I was about 3 when this came out, so this is not my original off-the-rack copy. Anyway, Famous Monsters, a wonderful thing, something I truly love. And now Monster Bash is the new version of it, and they do a very good job. And they're going to be having a convention in Pittsburgh coming up real soon. And Man Bear Pig, do you live near Pittsburgh? I think you live in Pennsylvania, right? Are you going to that Monster Bash convention? Let's see. Oh, well, let's see what we got here. This is from July of 1958. It is Mad Magazine number 40. The bride has walked away from the wedding cake. Well, we were talking about EC. Mad is an EC publication. There was a company called Educational Comics, run by Max Gaines. Max Gaines died in a boating accident, and his son inherited his comic book empire. His son was William Gaines. His son had no interest in comics, but now he suddenly is running a comic company right out of college, and he decides, I'll make comics the way I would, what I'd like to read. And so he switched over he changed it from, it was EC, and he changed it from Educational Comics to Entertaining Comics. And he switched over the titles to Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, horror comics, and then they did an excellent line of science fiction, weird science, weird fantasy. They had crime comics. They're all very well written, very literate, beautiful artwork. It was the state of the art. It's still never been beaten. And these Warren magazines of the 60s were trying to imitate, like I said, the EC bar, standard of excellence from the early 50s. And at that time, it was just 10 years after EC, so a lot of the original writers were still around. They were only 10 years older, not much older, so they got a lot of the original artists to do the art in creepy and eerie. The problem is they didn't have the original writers, and Al Feldstein, is it Feldstein? I say it both ways, like Tarzan, Kazar, you can say it either way. But Al Feldstein did a terrific job of writing, and William Gaines, they did the writing, and Harvey Kurtzman wrote the war comics, and of course Mad, which started as a comic. Anyway, the government got involved. Comic books were supposed to be causing juvenile delinquency and everything like that. Kids were joining gangs. There was a problem. So was it comic books causing it to happen? They had Senate subcommittees anyway. The comic books started to clean themselves up before the government got involved. They put a little symbol in the corner. This is the seal of approval that this comic is wholesome and okay for kids. And it ran a lot of the companies out of business. A lot of the companies that were imitating EC that didn't have as much creativity, they took things a lot farther and the area of bad taste. And anyway, the whole industry was kind of brought down a lot of pegs. And the wonderful experiment that was EC went away, except for one comic, Mad, which was changed from a comic book to a magazine form. And once it's a magazine, it's no longer a comic book, so it doesn't have to fit into that little code, the self-censoring code. So Mad continued on, and William Gaines, this was what kept him rich for the rest of his life. Mad exists today. They put out every 4 months or so, they'll put out a special, and it's mostly reprints, and they just keep it going on life support just because the Mad name is an intellectual property that they could use in the future for a TV show or a movie or a cartoon. It just something that Warner, I guess it's still Warner, owns Mad, and they just don't want to let it just completely cease publication and get completely out of the public eye. So it's Mad is just on life support. And one of the last surviving guys that worked for Mad, Al Jaffe, passed away, I think, last Thursday. So all you got left are like Angelo Torres and Sergio Aragones. But look at these wonderful ads. It's a fake ad. Mad didn't run real ads for the most part. Very rarely did they back then. So it's Salem, don't inhale them. So they'd try to teach kids that, they'd try to point out hypocrisy in the world and in the adult world, and that cigarettes were bad and alcohol was bad. They would teach you lessons in a very irreverent way. Now they would have real ads for their own products, like these crepe. I would love to have one of these vintage shirts, or a reproduction. I wouldn't want to wear a shirt that's from the 50s, because it would be the fabrics in old clothing get to be kind of fragile, and if you wear it, it just starts tearing. What was the real reason that some kids were starting to be juvenile delinquents in the 50s, and that they were starting to join gangs? Was it comic books? And also, you see these little quaint, funny films that they used to run in schools in the 50s, and we laugh at them when they run them on Night Flight. It's like teaching you manners and how to hold your fork and stuff. It's like, this is hilarious. And it seems so cornball. The reason they had those films that they showed them in school is the reason really why there was the juvenile delinquent kids in the 50s. And trust me, the juvenile delinquent gangs in the 50s that wore the black leather jackets weren't like Fonzie or John Travolta in Grease. They were dangerous guys. They would fight with knives, and they had homemade guns called zip guns, and they would fight with knives. I mean, they would tie their wrists together on one arm, and then they'd both have knives. It was like they were insane. They were as crazy. Why did those kids exist in the 50s? Because the decade before World War II, a lot of guys didn't come back from World War II, and they had kids, or they had babies, or they went off to war and their wife was pregnant, and they never came back because they were chewed up in a war, and those kids were raised without dads. And single parent families create the problems. And that's why you see a lot of problems today as well, because, in the mid-1960s, President Lyndon Baines Johnson brought in welfare and said, well, you don't get welfare if both parents are in the house. So a lot of families, it's like, okay, sayonara, get out of here, father, because we want the money. And so it caused families to become dysfunctional in order to get the money from the government. But kids need a mom and dad. It's possible to raise a kid with just a dad or just a mom. It can happen, but usually it doesn't work out just right. You need both mom and dad, and they need to be a sane mom and dad. But anyway, this is a pretty valuable book, this Mad for Keeps. I've got a copy, not in really great shape. Anyway, this is from July 1958. This is issue number 40. This may now be the earliest, or one of the earliest issues of Mad I have. There's an early Don Martin comic strip. Let me get this where let's see better. There's Mort Drucker, great artist that was with Mad all through the format of Mad. Didn't really change much, but in the issues in the 50s were, here's a parody of Pravda. It used to be Russia, Pravda, that was propaganda. Now we realize that the newspapers here in the United States, Pravda's gone, and the Soviet Union that dissipated during President Reagan's time. I mean, they're no longer communist. I'm not saying things are wonderful in Russia, but uh, they're now, I think, more. They have more religion over there than we do here, and I think their press is probably uh, more fair than our press is here. This is a great. So it's weird. This is Wally Wood doing this monster parody thing here. But you're constantly lied to by the mainstream media. Constantly, almost everything they say to you is a complete lie. If they're talking, they're lying. 100%, I guarantee you, it's all BS. And you've got to really search to find the truth, and you start realizing we've been lied to for a lot of years. Look at that mad jewelry. I don't know, I get off on my political soapbox because things are so terrible in the country right now, but and then that offends somebody that thinks Joe, because there are people that actually voted for Joe Biden and think he's great. I guess. I don't know. I guess they exist, because sometimes I'll lose subscribers. I guess that's why I lose subscribers. I don't know. Maybe I just don't show the right comic books to these morons. Let's see. So that's Mad number 40. Let's see. What do we have here? Mad number 42. Let's take a gander at this. Then I probably got to run and get lunch. See, they have these big names. Ernie Kovacs writing, Bob and Ray. What did they write exactly? Yeah, just wonderful stuff. Oh boy. Look at that. They're creating a Frankenstein with a Mad t-shirt. Yeah, because by 58, yeah, the monster craze had gotten big. So you see it reflected even here in the pages of Mad. This is Wally Wood, definitely Wally Wood. You can immediately tell that's Wally Wood's art. Little golden books. They have parodies of the golden books. Beautiful. You know what's weird? See, they had these giant cars back then. You go in houses built in the 1950s, you know, and they have these tiny little garages, and I just wonder, how did they fit those giant cars in this tiny one-car garage? It seems like the car wouldn't fit in the garage, the door wouldn't go down, and how would you even open the door of the car? Some of these little ranch houses from the 50s, they just don't seem like they would accommodate the cars of that era. I always thought it was fun, you know. I'd drive around, there'd be an estate sale, and you get to go into the house and appreciate the architecture, as well as look through all the cool stuff that... and sometimes you'd find all this neat stuff. The person that lived there that had passed away had all kinds of cool stuff. And sometimes you'd go into an estate sale, and there wouldn't be a single thing this person had accumulated in their entire life that you'd want to own. You'd look at the bookshelves, and there'd be a couple of books, and they'd be really boring books, like Reader's Digest condensed books, if even that. It's like they look at their records, and it would be all just the worst stuff, you know. It's like, wow, what a boring person. I hate this, it was just... here's a parody of a teenage... some of these I've seen before. They've been reprinted in Mad specials or in the Mad paperbacks. But it's best... seeing it in a Mad paperback is not the same as seeing it full-size page, because they had to break up the art. But so this is a parody of a teenage fan magazine from back then. I love the 1950s. Oh, interesting. This is art by, it says David Berg, who later just went by Dave Berg, that always did the lighter side of. But here the art is a very different style with that, well, I guess pen and ink wash or more. Oh, wow. Just great stuff. So what have we got here? Yeah, they had The Price is Right even back then. That was I think that's still going, The Price is Right, isn't it? The Price is All Right. December 59. That's a long-running game show. But I don't know what's still running today. We don't get regular television. We don't have an antenna. We just watch what's streaming. Okay. No matter how you look at it, it's going to be a mad year, 1961. So you can put it either way on the newsstand. They did something similar around this time. Well, right the year before, in 1960, when Nixon was running against Kennedy in the election, they put out an issue. They knew that what issue would be on the stands on election night. So they had on one side Alfred Newman waving a flag with a picture of Richard Nixon, and they say, "Congratulations, Nixon, we were with you all the way." And then you flipped it over on the other side, it was an identical cover, except now it's a picture of Kennedy. "Congratulations, President Kennedy, we were with you all the way." And then there was a little instruction for the news dealer. Whoever wins, display the cover that way, so that Mad would be the first magazine on the newsstand, scooping Time, Newsweek, Life, all the major magazines. They would be the first news magazine the morning after the election. They would be there, probably the day before the election too. But anyway, that was sort of that was clever. What Sort of Man Reads Mad? That's a parody of the ad that there was something like that looked just like this that was in Playboy. What Sort of Man Reads Playboy? And they showed this real sophisticated guy, but here's a guy driving an old beat up car. So the type of guy that reads Mad, a young man with an open mind and a sharp sense of humor. The Mad reader has very little else to recommend him. He dresses atrociously. His tastes run to the ridiculous, and he's usually flat broke. If he does have any money, he spends it on idiotic things like the kooky car in the picture. Incidentally, the young man beside the car isn't the Mad Reader. The young man underneath the car is the Mad Reader. Oh, okay. That's actually the Mad Reader there. Okay. Yeah. It says... the first upside down year since 1881, and it says the last upside down year until 6009. Huh. Well, that must have been really special to live in 1961 in a year that could flip upside down. I missed that by a few years. There's Spy vs. Spy has already appeared, and we were in March of 61. Antonio Prohias, I might be pronouncing it wrong, he came over from Cuba. He escaped from Cuba and did this comic strip, which really didn't have words because he didn't really speak English. But here, this is the wonderful when they did these comic strip parodies, they were always wonderful. What is this here? Oh, it's about guest shots. So, all right, they have Paladin guest starring on Gunsmoke from another TV series, The Untouchables. What do they have happening here? All right. Well, but the comic strips, what do they have here? Oh, it's Blondie, but Donald Duck is appearing, guest starring in the Blondie comic strip. Who's guest starring in? Oh, here, Joe Palooka. Dick Tracy is guest starring in Joe Palooka and is boxing Joe Palooka. Bringing Up Father with Little Orphan Annie. Some of these comic strips are older comic strips. You kind of had to be there. Here, and I guess they have Mary Worth appearing in Little Abner. This one is more recognizable to modern readers. You've got Superman guest starring in Dennis the Menace, and he's saying, "No, kid, I'm not through phoning. Now, would you stop opening that door?" Okay, that one, it makes more. I mean, I know these old comic strips. I mean, I'm not an expert on Bringing Up Father or, Joe Palooka, but I'm aware of them and I've read some of them. But I think the average person today, these are comic strips that have been forgotten to time. Okay, so a lot of great stuff in here. Oh my gosh, this is Play Kid, parody of Entertainment for Tots, and it's just it's kind of a warped. Yeah, that's something. What are they thinking, man? What are they thinking? I can imagine mothers finding this issue of Mad and tearing it up. Here's a special 10th anniversary issue. Number 72 from July of 62, so it started in 1952. All right. What time is it? Tell me the time. Put it down in the talk chat section down below. Ooh, that's got some nice art on the back. Look at this fake ad for dog food. What's going on here? 6:01, add warm water and stir a minute. 6:02, things happen fast. Now doggy is dying to go for a walk. World's only dog food that regulates your doggy right in the bow wow. Okay, it makes your dog want to go to the bathroom really quickly. All right. Mad Twist Rock and Roll, that's a great record that you can listen to for free on YouTube. There's one song called She Got a Nose Job. I think that was the one that sticks in my memory the most. It's a parody of 50s rock and roll and 50s pop. More parodies of comic strips. There's Dennis the Menace as a grown-up talking to the United Nations. The artist on this has to be, I would imagine, is Wally Wood. Yes, it is. There's Superman, older, with a pot belly and gray hair. Oh, it's what if comic strip characters were as old as their strips? Yeah, okay. So now it would be even more, because yesterday was the 85th birthday of the Superman comic book, so he would be even older than that. Huh. So anyway, wonderful stuff. And what is this parody of? Seamen in action. get a couple more Mads, then we'll start looking at some comic books. I don't know, some of the people that collect comic books don't. They turn up their nose at magazines. I don't. Okay, this is Mad. This ad on the back was on a Mad special that was like the first Mad I think I ever got. So this is actually from October '62. And the ad on the back, I remember that. That's one of the Mad staffers. I'm trying to remember who that is. It's it's Sucka Coffee. I guess Wacky Packages kind of, got their inspiration from the ad parodies and Mad. But what Mad would do is they would point out the hypocrisy in TV commercials, the hypocrisy in politics. They would teach kids that the grown-up world, there's a lot of idiocy, and it taught them to have to think critically and to be skeptical, and so I think that's a pretty good thing, because if you believe everything you're told, then you might wind up voting for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris or whatever. Dr. Killjoy is a parody of Dr. Kildare. This one must be from a different collection than those other ones. This one's a little bit more... Shut up with your Burger King commercial or whatever that is. All right. Oh, it's a Christmas seal. The Christmas issues of Mad I always love. They always have usually Alfred Newman appearing as the ghost of Christmas past, or no, it's the ghost of Jacob Marley, right, with the chains. I think that's what it is. I think that's Nick Meglin, one of the Mad guys. This Modern Teacher magazine. We're now into January of '64. Okay, well, that means this was on the stands when Kennedy was assassinated, because magazines and comic books are usually dated 2 months in advance. So what was November '63, then you have December '63, and then January '64. You have 2 months for the magazine to have a chance to sell, and then they would pull them, and just, at least that's the way it is with comic books. I assume it's the same way with magazines. But anyway, this is like all of this was being done right about right before Kennedy was assassinated by his own government. But it's not a shock to you. But if you're really good and you're on the Warren Commission and you keep that secret, well, hey, maybe we can make you president someday by, we'll just get rid of Nixon's vice president. We'll put you in there as his vice president. Then we'll knock Nixon out. And then magically, voila, Gerald Ford, you're president. See, here's another one of those things that, see, that's where Wacky Packages come from, is Mad. That's the inspiration. It's just great stuff, man. They're talking about trademark mergers. There's the merger between Playboy and Mad. Oh, man. I don't see see that. This is before they started doing that Christmas Carol Alfred Newman thing. But there's just something wonderful about Christmas that, for some reason, one of the things I think about when I think about Christmas time is Mad Magazine. Is that strange? It just, I guess, because Christmas brings me happiness, even though it's a pagan holiday, and Mad Magazine brings me happiness. I'm completely Christian, but honestly, Christmas is a pagan holiday. There's nothing in the Bible that tells you that Jesus was born December 25th, and everything about Christmas is based on other stuff, you know. So, well, but I still love Christmas, even though I know that it's not really. But if you don't know that, and you just celebrate the birth of Christ, even though he was probably born more September, until I'm hearing. I heard other people say maybe more in the spring. I don't know. This is a cracked collector's edition. 5 decades of decadent humor. This was the main imitation of Mad. And it was a great magazine, too. In the 70s, they went a little bit nuts. I guess maybe they'd always been that way, but in the 70s, it got kind of bad. It was always John Severin did a lot of art for it, and he had started with Mad, and he's one of my favorite artists. In the 70s, they started thinking, what can sell? You know, like Godfather was popular. So then Happy Days becomes popular. And then the Jaws shark becomes popular. So after a while, they said, well, we got to sell magazines. So they would have Fonzie, Godfather, the Jaws shark, and then they'd have a building burning in the background for Towering Inferno. They'd have every fad that's happening all on the same cover. And it just, or then Star Wars, okay, so you'd have Darth Vader, you'd have Donnie and Marie, you'd have, they put everybody on the cover. And looking back in the 60s, they did that too, but it, you know, it was cooler stuff. They'd combine Man from U.N.C.L.E. with Frankenstein and the Beatles and everything. I mean, they just always, that's how they would sell them. Here's some covers on the back, you know, that's about the time period I started buying Cracked, in the very early 70s. And then I bought that one off the rack, and that's a Close Encounters issue. I'm not sure if I have that issue or not. And then it got kind of weak, and then it took off again when Mort Todd kind of took over the magazine. This is from January 94. This may have been when Mort Todd was editing the magazine. Let's take a look. Cliff Mott. I think, wasn't that like Cliff Mott? Wasn't that a pseudonym of Mort Todd? He brought Don Martin over from Mad. So I think he was in charge of the magazine at this time. But this is all reprints of stuff from the history of Cracked. So here's a parody of the Brady Bunch called the Brainy Bunch. Wow. There was a time period, the art was always great and Cracked, but there's a time period where the words just didn't quite fit in the word balloons. There was too much space. That's not a good look. In fact, I guess that was a lot of this is their, see, there's the Mork and Mindy parody, but then they're like getting King Kong into it too, because everyone thought King Kong was going to be a big deal. Pretty cool. All right. So we'll move this box over this way. See what we can look at here. Oh, we were looking at some of these Marvel Tales books yesterday, weren't we? Where did I put the ones we were looking at? Oh, I think, oh, they're in the other room. Marvel Tales, the 60s Marvel Tales was, this is issue 6 of Marvel Tales. And this is in the 70s when I started buying these 60s Marvel Tales would reprint the early issues of Spider-Man and Thor, and you'd get an Ant-Man story. That's the story about the Wasp. You got the great ad on the back for the Marvel Aurora hobby kits. That Spider-Man kit was a very complicated kit. You'd have to be a really good painter to really get that, to get all the little lines, the little webs on Spider-Man's costume, and all the leopard skin spots on his pants and stuff, and to paint the backdrop. It would require great skill, and it was a pretty small model kit. I had the model kit, a 70s reissue of it, and it was built up and everything. I don't know what happened to that kit, but it was never, I never had it painted. It was just a red statue. I don't think I'd even have the skill to paint it today. I would have to commission someone to do that. So this is a book from January of '67, and here it's reprinting Spider-Man number 9 from February of 1964. So this comic was only 3 years old, but back then there was no way to get back issues. There were no comic book stores, so if a comic book was 3 years old and you're just discovering Spider-Man, this was a blessing that they reprinted these stories so you could read them. I mean, you could maybe find them at a garage sale or some used bookstore. Look at this great ad. Look at this great, the ad at the bottom. Watch Marvel superheroes on TV. This is when those cartoons were on, syndicated on television. Here's the Thor story. Just beautiful. This is an actual Silver Age comic that's affordable. It's not the original comics, but they're reprinted not long after, and it just is really fun to read, and this won't break your budget or whatever. So there was Marvel Tales, and Marvel Tales kept going up through probably the 90s. It got to be it reduced to a regular size comic and only reprinted Spider-Man stories. But as you know, this is a thicker comic, and it would reprint a Spider-Man story and then several others. And the other one was Marvel's Greatest Comics that reprinted Fantastic Four and other heroes. And then when it went down to a smaller size comic, it would only reprint the Fantastic Four. But this is reprinting. This one is from January of '69, and it's reprinting this Green Goblin story. And as I was showing you last time, if I hold this up like this, look at that, that's when Betty Brant was the main love interest. That like you see in the '67 Saturday morning cartoon that was on ABC. Betty Brant was the girlfriend. Although I noticed, I had not remembered this, but I noticed it recently watching some of those old Spider-Man cartoons. In the second season, Mary Jane Watson does appear in an episode. I don't think Gwen Stacy ever does, but and you see her go dancing and everything. It's like, I don't remember that. I thought They were only based on the real early stories. Look at this great Steve Ditko art. Looking at this, you would think I'm holding up a really good copy of the original issue of The Amazing Spider-Man, because it looks exactly like it did. The coloring, the page quality, the 60s but then you realize, oh, it's a reprint from a few years later. This is a much better way, in my opinion, to read it than buying a $150 Marvel Comics omnibus that has been recolored and is glossy, and this is easier on my eyes too, because the glossiness is kind of rough on my eyes. I don't know. This is a early Thor story, where he is with the Avengers. And I think this might have been one of the stories that was turned into one of the Marvel superheroes cartoons. I'm not sure. I think look at that. I'm going into action. Those different poses. It's got a little bit of a tiny tear at the top that kind of causes the pages kind of stick together. There's Norman Rockwell trying to recruit people that like to draw. So, how about that, ladies and gentlemen? Okay. Oh, here's a Western from the 20-cent era. Western Gunfighters, number 11, featuring Black Rider, Apache Kid, and Matt Slade. When I was a kid, I pretty much ignored Western comics unless I just ignored them. Unless there was nothing else on the stand, I didn't get Western comics. Obviously, romance comics I wasn't interested in as a kid, and I really wasn't interested in the Kung Fu comics. Now I'm interested in all those genres. But these comics you do not find very often in comic book stores, because comic store owners probably with good reason just assume that these will not sell. They put them out on the store floor. It's just taking up space. But there are people that will come in and they'll say, I'm looking for Westerns, I'm looking for war comics, but you don't see them very often. And most people are just, I'm looking for Wolverine or whatever the heck the current popular thing is. But this is just fun stuff. Westerns, and there's beautiful artwork. Is that John Severin? It looks like John Severin art here that we just saw in Cracked. In the 50s, they didn't really credit the artist. I think that's John Severin, isn't it? Yeah, well, it's good art. Yes, indeed. Oh, and I love the 20-cent era. There's just something. There's some Jack Kirby art here. So, Black Rider, Duel at Dawn. Yeah, whoever's putting this comic together in whenever this came out, 1972 probably, this issue, was choosing the best stuff from the files. What else do we have here? Oh, a war comic, GI Combat. I always loved the Haunted Tank. Now, this may very well have been a comic book my older brothers owned. This is the right time period. They bought mostly DC. They turned their noses up at Marvel. My older brothers were about 10, 11 years older than me. And they were buying comics in the 60s, and I was born in 1965, and they had filled one of my father's footlockers from the Army, filled with comic books. And there was another footlocker that was filled with Tonka trucks. None of the Tonka trucks survived to come down to me, and none of the comic books survived to come down to me. They were probably done away with in one of the moves, because we moved a lot being in the military. But I always thought, I kind of want to reclaim my rightful inheritance, those comic books that should have come to me. And so, I listened as my older brothers told me the comics that they bought. So I want to get those war comics. And my second oldest brother, Mike, would always tell me I had all the Dial H for Heroes, and I later found out, well, that was actually House of Mystery for a while, had Dial H for Hero. So I tried to get a bunch of those in the late 70s just to try to rebuild my inheritance. But I wouldn't be surprised if they had this issue. This is October, November 1964. About a year after the Kennedy assassination. This one's in pretty nice shape. GI Combat. This was a comic book that predated, that was existed in DC, took it over from, was it Quality, I think, that published like Plastic Man and stuff, and then DC bought that company, and they just continued GI Combat with the same logo and the same numbering. They just took it over, kind of like when DC took over the Tarzan comic from Gold Key. They continued the numbering, which I think is pretty cool. Look at this. Nice page color. I can't wait to read this. Indeed. Now, War. I mean, these are fun comics to read. It just, the guys making these comics had been in war. Most of them had been in war. This looks like a World War I story. Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah, it's a World War I story. Here's an ad. It has the Roman soldiers ad and the Revolutionary War soldiers ad on one page. Love this stuff. You can question, should kids have really been exposed to comics that make war seem fun? You can do that all day long. Usually those stories do show that it's a horrible thing, but they don't really show the true horrors of war. Some comics do more than others, but it's just one of those things. Now, a comic from my childhood that was a lot of fun was Weird War. Now, this was a war comic that added in the supernatural and monsters and ghosts and stuff into the war stories. So that combining of two genres, well, it's kind of like the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup, ladies and gentlemen. You love chocolate, you love peanut butter. You run into somebody eating their peanut butter while you're eating your chocolate bar, you accidentally mush them together, and you've created the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. And Weird War combines horror, monsters with war. It's delicious. So the Ravaging Riders of Ruin. This is a little bit further on into the run. With the dreaded UPC symbol. I was ranting on the Four Color Fossils last week. I don't like any comics with the after they brought in the UPC code. That's not really true. It's just, the ads of the 60s look better than the ads of the 70s. I don't like that art, that just, I didn't like it when kids had hair that looked like that. But it's unquestionably great. I rant and rave, and it's all BS. It's part of my stage persona. There's a Richie Rich ad in the middle of a DC comic for selling Grit, the newspaper Grit, that I've only seen once. I've actually seen there is a real newspaper called Grit, and somebody saved a copy. And I actually saw a copy. It's just a lame little newspaper. And they tried to recruit kids to So let's see. This is another example of 1970s advertising that's just ugh. Weird War number 92. Doomsday is 4 horsemen come riding. Yeah. They say not to worry about the all the threats of nuclear war because the space aliens have already disarmed all of the weapons. They're not going to let us do that. And then other people say, well, don't worry, God's not going to let his creation be destroyed. And then other people say, don't worry, Donald Trump took the nuclear codes with him, and Biden, even if he wants to, can't destroy the world because that's why he was raiding Mar-a-Lago looking for those nuclear codes. Who knows? You can listen to all the conspiracy theories on Rumble. This is a fantastic cover, issue 96. It says, you may love it, you may hate it, but we promise you will never forget it. The Mutation of Private Voight. Okay, there's a dead guy on the ground, and this guy is like turning into an angel. This, you may love it, you may hate it. That's kind of, that's like what Stan Lee did to Wally Wood on Daredevil. He kind of said, you know, you decide whether you like this or not. We're not quite sure. It's just like, it just seemed like Wally Wood wrote a few issues of Daredevil, and Stan Lee was real snarky in his little captions about it. Yes, indeed. Weird War Tales number 96 usually had like Death being a little Crypt Keeper type host in this comic. Yes, it's a great comic, and it does have a UPC symbol, so I'll have to eat my words. Here's another ad that could be great, but it's it's better than any ad today, but the artwork's just not, it's not up to, and these, I don't like Lego when they tell you what to make. All the Lego now is like, they're like sets. Build this Star Wars spaceship, build this, that. When I was a kid, it was just you had Lego blocks and you built whatever with these Lego blocks of different shapes. Now that you buy kits, you have to put together this incredibly complicated stuff. To me, it's complicated. To me, that's not, it takes away some of your creativity that I thought Legos originally had. Yes, indeed. Man, there's guys, make more videos. I want to watch more videos of other people. Some people haven't done videos in like 8 months, and I'm starting to like worry. What happened to you? I want to see your videos, man. Is everything okay? Here's Weird War number 99. Great cover. See again, but see, it's the early 80s, and the ad doesn't look as good. I think that's the deal. I think it's the problems. The 80s came along, the late 70s and 80s. I really do think that's when things just started to get weak. For everything went bad, you know. Star Wars came out. I love Star Wars, but it ruined the monster magazines because everything became space war stuff. So Star Wars hurt that. It's just, there was just a lot of, hold on one moment, ladies and gentlemen. I gotta have background music to look at these comics. So I don't know, it's just ugly, man. The design of this ad is ugly. I don't know. Oh, there's Steve Ditko art. Steve Ditko art. But what did I just see, man? Oh, printing error. There was kind of when they were printing, there was some kind of extra ink on the press or something. And look, it kind of makes it look like she's got a 5 o'clock shadow. And that's just a problem that happened in the printing. And then it was kind of cut wrong too. Oh yeah, yeah, here too. You know, it's just kind of cut wrong and still wonderful. Oh, this is nice. That's hold on, Liz. Where's the beginning of this story? Rick Estrada art. Interesting. The art almost looked like Alex Toth or Alex. I always call him Toth, but I guess yeah, I hear people say Toth. It looks like his art for a second, but it's a guy named Rick Estrada, which I assume is not Eric Estrada, moonlighting, drawing comic books. I don't think so. And um, and I hate this radical, totally radical. Baby shoes. Oh, I hated when shoes. To me, PF Flyers are cool, but it's like totally radical. You can ride your skateboard and your radical bike and be totally rad and have your sneakers. But I'll forgive them because it's now apparently when Adolf Hitler appears on the cover of a comic book, it becomes more valuable. So this issue is like at least 2 or 3 times more valuable than other comics in the run, the ones before or after it, because there are people. I mean, I knew someone that was like that actually. Now that I think about it, he bought comics from the 40s, from during the war, and he just he mainly collected monster stuff, I guess he figured Adolf Hitler is like a monster, so he collected. He wasn't really a comic book guy, but he would buy comic books that had Hitler on the cover because I guess it's like the ultimate monster. You know, it's a real life monster. But anyway, this is when the basic kind of the universal monster guys. You know, they weren't the universal monsters, but Frankenstein, Wolfman, Dracula. You know, they team up against Hitler, and they were called the Creature Commandos. And they're making a cartoon animated series. James Gunn is out of the, and they had, I think Rick Flag, who was with the Suicide Squad, is in. It's but the version that they're making in the animated series, I think, is different. It's a more '90s version of the Creature Commandos. But anyway, great comics. This is just so great. It looks the printing in this time period in the early '80s. If you look at the detail on these ads, it's a little bit muddy. There was a time period where comics weren't looking as good, but the art sure is great. It just would you man, there's a lot of ads on this channel. Oh, um, I remember this ad for some role-playing game called Attack of the Mutants. Whew. I think what I need to do today, man. Oh, cool. Let's take a look at this. This is a little bit different. It's a little mini comic. Bugs Bunny Rocket to the Moon. This would probably be good. I could fill the screen. Maybe I can make this the thumbnail for this episode. This entire library of 15 all-new, exclusive first printing pocket-sized comics are yours. And they come from Quaker Puffed Rice. And it's like Dell era Bugs Bunny comics, but printed in this format. It's a format, a very unusual comic format, perfect for sneaking into class. Oh, look at those space aliens. It's the Tijuana Bibles were about this size, except they weren't as long. But we won't talk about Tijuana Bibles here on this family channel. Harvey Collector's Comics. I'm a big fan of Harvey comics. You don't hear people talk about Harvey enough. Harvey was, it wasn't just Marvel and DC back in the old days. There were other companies. There was Harvey, there was Archie, there was Gold Key, there was Charlton, there was Dell. There was a lot of stuff out there. Today, most people, the younger people, think it was just Marvel and DC. It was not that way in the old days. Anyway, you have reprints of early issues of Richie Rich here. The number 1 and number 2 issues of Dollars and Cents. Now, Richie Rich had about 47 different, I like the number 47, had a million different titles. There was Richie Rich, and there was Richie Rich Billions, Richie Rich Millions, Richie Rich Dollars and Cents. So this is one of the comics. But every month there must have been 10 different Richie Rich comics that came out. And same thing with Casper and all the other characters. There was no way as a kid you could have bought all of them. There was just too much. No one, I guess, really tried to get all of them. It was just stuff that parents and grandparents bought for you because they knew it was wholesome. There was never going to be anything, that people weren't going to do anything offensive in these Harvey comics. And the art was always cute and well drawn, and it was just a consistent thing. Ironically, Harvey, this company, had printed some of the most horrifying horror comics in the early 50s. They were trying to imitate EC by going even farther with the gore and everything. But, you know, by this point, from, you know, all through the 60s and 70s, it was just wholesome stuff. And they never pushed the limits or tried to sneak things in like maybe the Archie comics kind of did, you know, little jokes that you kind of knew the writers had to know that has a double meaning, but you just can't be that naive. It never happened with these comics. So this is a reprint from August of 1963, this first issue. August of 63. So that means that this, what you're seeing here, this art would have been sold, would have been on the newsstand June of 63. So school had just gotten out for the school year of 62, 63. You're starting your summer, you're reading this comic here. You don't realize what the next 6 months have, you know, when you start your school year, the 63, 64 school year, major changes are going to happen in your life. Whatever grade you're in, 3rd grade, 4th grade, and you're going to have a big, around Thanksgiving time, the president's going to be killed, a coup d'etat, and then about 2 months later, you're going to see the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, and your life's never going to be the same. Some of your friends may already have gotten some Beatles records, and you might be hearing them in the summer of August 63. If you've got some cool, hip friends, but most people didn't really discover the Beatles until they were on the Ed Sullivan Show. That's my understanding. I wasn't around then, but I'd like to think I was, because I love that time period. But that's when things were going to go bad, because they killed Kennedy, because Eisenhower had warned you about the military industrial complex, and that they want war because that's where the profits are. And so, as soon as Kennedy was gone, we start moving into the Vietnam War. And that's really what wrecked everything, man. Let's keep looking at this book. I don't know. I get political, and I don't want to offend you, but I just wish the 50s could have just kept going. You know, it just. Whatever you think, I really think Donald Trump coming back with what he knows now, the country might be able to be salvaged. But right now, we're on life support. And hopefully, because this is a great country. I mean, it really always. I just don't like people messing up this country. And that was one of the first blows, this assassination of Kennedy. That's where it started. IMHO, in my humble opinion. I just figured out what IRL means. You know, you got Timcast, IRL, Tim Pool. What the heck does IRL mean? Oh, found out it means in real life.